I think that like the dumbest argument from like the fossil record is like, look, the fish are all the way at the bottom. Like, no shit, Sherlock. Where do you think the sea is? It's like why would the fish be on top, right? If the fish are at the bottom of the sea, wouldn't they be the ones who are at the lower levels? It's like this is not really an argument, but it baffles me that they think this is like a real good argument.
Well, no, they don't get fossils from the bottom of the ocean. It's places on land that used to be underwater.
No, for example, they'll say like we evolved from some like pond scum, and the first to evolve were like these crab-shaped things. I forget what they call them, but those are bottom-dwelling animals. So of course they're gonna be at the bottom. But where else would they be?
Yeah,
it's not gonna be in the mountains.
So the land was like under the ocean, but then when the ocean moved, like the fish are under the land animals that are.
But like the ocean isn't going to move to the mountains, right? It's ridiculous.
Over time, it does.
It doesn't move to the mountains. Come on.
Well, everything.
I think Gunwood's point is that like certain plates rubbing against each other have pushed mountains up into existence that used to be under the water. Is what the point is. Like,
oh, okay. I see what you're saying now. Well, yeah. Okay. I mean, for example, in the Grand Canyon, we have like seashells on top, right? But the Grand Canyon isn't like I'm talking about the walls of the Grand Canyon, not the cavern.
Is there seashells in the Grand Canyon? I didn't.
Yeah, on the top. But the Grand Canyon isn't a mountain; it's a deposit. So that means they got there through water. So the most likely explanation, it's a large flood.
It's awesome. I've seen it. Although there was a man that fell in it the other day off the side of it.
Ooh, scary.
I don't think a large flood explains the Grand Canyon at all.
The walls of the Grand Canyon. I'm not talking about the hole, because that was made by a river.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a giant flood deposited all the sea creatures.
Well, look, if there's seashells on top of the Grand Canyon, right? There has to be an explanation as to how there's seashells on top of this, this structure. That's
the land that. Well, I don't know.
I went to the Grand Canyon and I saw no shells.
Nobody knows actually. Like nobody knows actually. That's the official story.
The official narrative. I don't know. What does Hizzle have to say?
What happened?
As an elder.
What happened?
As an elder of evolution, what explain to us?
Explain to us about what?
How the walls of the Grand Canyon got formed.
So I was going out in the woods one day with some friends. Did
you get jerked by that ghost again? that hobo ghost?
The hobo ghost that smoked me out with some rock. No, it's this is easily this is easily referenced, but yeah, two things. So one, the water cut it down, but at the same time the sides were going up because of what's it called, tectonic activity. So there you go.
No, I think he means the seashells in the rock layers of the Grand Canyon.
Oh, seashells in the rock. I don't fucking know. Yeah, that whole area, the whole U.S. was underwater at one point.
That's what I said. It's like the land is just underwater.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it underwater because it was like below sea level, or was it underwater because there was a giant flood?
No, the continents moved, and the oceans moved.
Oh,
and stuff goes underwater, and
yeah, this is a dumb discussion. I mean,
like you can measure the Earth moving, and you can be like, oh, if it moved this long, it would be over here.
Yeah, but it's like it's a deposit. We know it's a deposit. And how do deposits happen? So it's not like the bottom of the ocean, because the bottom of the ocean isn't a deposit. This is well, generally it's not. I mean,
no, generally it is, because you've got the entire ocean full of life that's constantly dying and floating to the bottom. So yes, you have lots of sediment in the ocean. We're just not getting at any of it right now because there's nothing really fossilized down there right now that we have known, that we have seen. Yeah, we get stuff where it's much shallower water where things would be. You know, that's where we get our fossils from. You don't usually get a lot of those like shells and shit like that. You don't get a lot of those creatures in like the deeps. They don't really chill there that much. They're there. There are some that are there, but no, the majority of them are going to be in shallower waters. Like I can't remember what it was called. It was a sea of some sort that came through. Yes, but
in shallow waters, but like the ocean, you don't get that in the ocean.
You don't get it in a deep ocean, no.
In Kentucky, you know, we have Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. And exploring Mammoth Cave, in the last year, they found like one shark species, and then they found another that was a brand new shark species, like in the Mammoth Cave, you know. And I was like, I was the same way as that. I was like, how did they end up these shark species in Mammoth Cave? But my daughter explained that used to be a sea, like all the way across that continent, part of the continent.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's other problems with the a worldwide flood that that we would have to get over first. You know, the heat problem, where'd it come from, where'd it go, things like that.
Isn't it
a lot of evidence would be required for that?
Wait. The thing is, I was thinking about the heat problem because I think the heat problem has to do with like the Earth shifting, isn't it?
I think it has to do with the amount of the amount of water that's you know exposed to the rays of the sun, that's exposed to the energy
and the decay of all the like plants and animals on the Earth.
Yeah,
I remember Erica talking about it, but I forgot what was the argument. It's been a long time because she used it against Donnie.
Because there would be a lot if everything on the planet died, all the plants and animals all died at once, there would be a huge amount of decay heat that would be created.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You know, actually, I think I actually don't think that's a problem because, like, for example, we know there's a bunch of oil underground, right? And what is oil? And how do you make oil? The way you make oil is a bunch of dead stuff with a lot of heat and pressure. So you need heat and pressure of a bunch of dead stuff. So the dead stuff would be like the dinosaurs. And of course, then we have the heat from the heat problem. And then we have the pressure from them being just buried by the flood. So, you know, I actually think that kind of grants it. I think there's more evidence for like a giant flood.
Yeah, I don't see how that goes together, but just for the information, the vast majority of our oil is plant matter, is trees actually, and algae, but trees to a great degree, because we didn't have any like that decaying madness that Robin was talking about. That didn't happen for trees. Trees evolved before the microbes that would decay them. So you had multiple kilometer tall piles of trees that other trees were growing out of the top of, and then all of that. This was millions of years before the flood would have happened.
Before I think the Christian says like the flood happened like 6,000 years ago, or I think less.
I don't know. It's your shit, not mine.
It's not mine either, man.
I don't know when any of that happened.
I think like 4,400 years ago or something like that.
Big Bad Mama. Hi.
Big Bad Mama knows more than I do. I just speak comfortably.
The geologist is here.
Big Bad Mama, tell us how oil. Yeah.
Bubblegum, the fish aren't at the bottom of the geologic column. You have single-celled organisms.
I know. You got those crab things. That's what I'm saying. But
no, single-celled organisms are at the bottom because they were the first life forms. And, of course, we find them. So if you go to the lowest layers of the Grand Canyon, you find single-celled organisms. You don't find fish.
No, look, you're going to find single-celled life forms everywhere.
Well, that's true.
So
That's true, but that's all you find at those lowest levels.
yeah, that's because they're the only ones who can survive, right? But like the argument, like, where's that little shoe crab thing?
No, I don't think that's
Horseshoe
what he's
crab?
talking about. I think what he's saying is we're only finding them at the bottom of the fossil record.
I'm saying at the lowest levels, that's all you find are single-celled organisms because those things hadn't evolved yet. Horseshoe crabs and other organisms like that.
No,
not the depth of the ocean. He's not meaning the depth of the ocean. He's meaning just the depth of the what's it called? Not the substrate, but the
geologic column.
Yeah, the layers. What's the technical term for the layer?
Stratigraphy.
Yeah, stratigraphy. Yes. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about that. Like when we look for fossils, we only find fossils in this order. And a flood would fuck that all up.
Well, I don't see how a flood is going to reach like the bottom of the ocean, right?
If it filled the earth with water, there would be a lot of churn, brother.
The landscapes continually, you're undergoing rises in sea level, falls of sea level, tectonic uplift. So the landscape's changing continually. So sometimes you're getting deposition of deeper water sediment, and sometimes you're getting beach sediment being deposited. It depends all what the ocean is doing in a particular location. Or sometimes you'll get river deposition if there's rivers that are depositing sediment there. The surface is very dynamic, is my point.
Yeah, but the critique about the horseshoe, like how they sequence, how they line up the order of how evolution goes, right? It said like first single cell organisms, then these water living organisms. It's like, of course, the water living organisms are going to be lower because they're at the bottom of the sea, right? So you're not going to find like mammal, like elks. Like
well, you didn't have land dwelling. You didn't have land dwelling organisms until the amphibians made it to land. So you would have fish that would be found first, and you wouldn't have any land dwelling organisms because they hadn't evolved yet.
But the critique is, why would you find like water dwelling animals lower than like land dwelling animals? That's because water dwelling animals are lower than like land dwelling animals. It's a literal physical position, right?
No.
What do you mean? No?
What?
I mean, you know that the sea level is rising and falling, and there's mountains that are being built and then mountains that are being eroded. You have all these things that are going on sometimes simultaneously. So you don't just have deposition based on topography, which is what you're saying.
Yes, sea levels rise and fall, but they're never gonna go like. You're never gonna see like a fish like somewhere in the mountains, unless it's a lake.
Well,
but like
you have fish at the top of the Himalayas because all those layers were uplifted by the collision between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate, and so it lifted all those sediments that were formerly at sea level up to their current elevation.
So that's a mountain,
a
right?
lot of fossil sites are like at the side of cliffs at like higher elevation, because that's where like you can access all the layers, right?
True. That's why the Grand Canyon is so well studied, because we have access to all those layers.
Yeah, and so like, who are going to be like naturally? Who are the ones who are going to be at the lower layers? It's going to be sea dwelling life because they tend to dwell below sea level.
That doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
Like the way they're like.
I mean, most fossils are marine fossils because they're the ones that have been fossilized by far the most, because you know, there's so much sediment and so much burial that's happening in the ocean, and you know, shells fossilize relatively easily compared with
No,
other.
I think the problem here is that when an animal dies, it like gets deposited on the first layer. It doesn't matter if it's underwater or not. It's whatever the top layer is.
It's whatever the depositional environment it gets buried in is where it's buried.
Well, this thing, fish don't roam around like on like the grass, right?
Yeah, so but when they die, they fall to the ocean floor, and then they're at the top of the layer.
You also have freshwater fish, Bubblegum, so you might have a river environment, and each layer that's deposited, say it's deposited in a river, you'll find freshwater fish, you'll find freshwater amphibians, and you'll find freshwater plants. Every layer represents a paleo ecosystem that deposition occurred in, whether it's a river, whether it's a lake, whether it's the ocean.
Yeah, it does represent like an ecosystem, but it doesn't represent a timeline. So you're not going to.
It does represent a timeline because we can date it by any number of ways.
Well, not if you're dating it by the fossil, because then it becomes circular.
Yeah, but they date volcanic elements either on each side of that layer or in that layer itself. There's ash falls. There's lava layers that occur in between, and so you can come up with brackets of when these layers are. Even if you can't directly date the layer by radiometric dating, you can come up with a bracket of when it was deposited by the volcanic elements on either side of it.
I would agree with that sort of dating, but like that's a very like limited. That doesn't really get you back like millions, thousands of years.
Well, it gets you back billions of years. I mean, you can use these techniques for billions of years. Yeah.
No, volcanoes haven't been around for billions of years. Come on.
What hasn't?
Volcanoes, like a specific volcano, right?
Yes, they have.
Yeah, they have.
No,
the whole surface is magma. What are you talking about?
Volcanoes form through tectonic activity, and tectonic activity's been on the planet since the beginning, except when it was, you know, a molten mass or what have you. But you've had volcanoes since the very beginning. It's just that the lithosphere, which is the crust basically, and the upper mantle, but the lithosphere is what's moving through plate tectonics. You have that recycling through subduction and different things to where, you know, there aren't many places on the planet where you have sediments that are, or lava layers that are billions of years old like that. But you do in the Grand Canyon. Not billions, but.
And Bubblegum, one thing I wanted to say is like, okay, if you think like the Grand Canyon, if water had formed the Grand Canyon or whatever, and that would be moving water, right? Like rapidly moving water.
Well,
not necessarily, Robin. It's basically the Grand Canyon is rises and falls of sea level.
I know, but like he's saying that he thinks that was cut out by water is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, no. Look, we're not talking about the hole in the Grand Canyon. Like we agree
with the sediments that were deposited as part of the Grand Canyon, not the way it was carved out. I think.
I was just going to say that, like whenever water moves and is like moving through things, like when you find stuff like that right there, everything would be jumbled up. Like if water caused those sediment layers, you would find everything all in one layer because that would be, you know, it would just cause everything to be mixed up.
It kind of is, isn't it?
Well, that if the flood scenario was the global flood scenario, that would be right, Robin. You would expect a jumble of fossils from every age to be in, you know, different layers.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to say. You did much better.
I don't understand.
And you don't see that. You don't see that.
Why Bubblegum believes in a global flood? Like, why do you believe in a global flood?
Because how do you get the Grand Canyon, right? That's a deposit. It's a water deposit.
No, from erosion over time.
No, we're not talking about the hole. I'm talking about the walls of the Grand Canyon. So the walls are a deposit.
And that's only
that are exposed in the walls. Is
if
what
there's
you're
a global flood.
So the way you get because like how high is the Grand Canyon above sea level? Right, it's pretty high. So
I don't.
Like
What even is
7,000
a
feet.
global flood in your view? I don't know what that even means.
a flood that it's like ridiculously large. I'm talking like you can pretty much
Like the
almost
Earth goes underwater. Where does that water come from? Like, what is the? How does this happen? Like you're just jumping from. You're like, oh, these deposits are like, oh, global flood.
no.
But
How
you're
do you
also
get these
like,
large deposits?
you're like, oh, the Bible narrative of the flood is wrong. Well, what
Well, yeah,
flood are you
obviously.
talking about? I don't know what you
We're talking
mean.
we're talking about a flood that can pretty much submerge a whole state underwater. If
Where
it could,
does
like, let's say
the
for
water
example, like the
can't
state of
spot
Nevada.
in?
That was
Yeah.
state flood.
Where did the water come from?
No, I think actually Ken Hovind kind of gets this right in like the way that the moon actually.
Kent Hovind is an independent fundamentalist
but-
Baptist,
No, but he's
and
right
you're
about
not.
the moon.
So
I know, but look, he makes the argument that the moon pretty much kind of like hosts up the water because of its
that does not
gravitational
make
pull.
any sense.
No, it does. That's how
Bubblegum.
it works.
Hey,
That's how the
Bubblegum.
titles. That's how we get titles. That's how
The
we get
moon
rising.
doesn't just get really heavy all of a sudden and pull
No,
all the
it's because of
water
its
and
gravitational
then
pull.
stop being heavy.
No, it's because of its gravitational pull on the surface of the
Bubblegum.
planet.
Bubblegum, let me tell you something here. So the only way you get limestone is through the very slow deposition of calcium carbonate organisms, very small calcium carbonate organisms accumulated in a calm environment. Now in the Grand Canyon, you have many separate limestone layers that are in between are sandstones and shales. So there is no way that you could get that sequence of sedimentary rocks in a flood environment because you have to have times when limestone doesn't form like sandstone or shale. It doesn't form through sediment. It forms through the precipitation of organisms. And they're shells, basically, calcium carbonate. And so the flood scenario is impossible to form those layers of limestone.
No,
You have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the Grand Canyon.
I think the flood is physically impossible. I don't think we need to worry about
all this suggests is
limestone layers.
No, like all this suggests is like there's multiple floods. Because yeah, you do need this intermediate time for like that the limestone to form. And so then
a lot of time.
Yeah. So we get that and then we get another flood. So it seems to me there's like multiple floods happening here.
Yeah, there's floods that happen all the time, Bubblegum.
Yeah,
it's,
but not like
it's the sea level that's rising, Bubblegum. So what forms at a beach?
Yeah, but how is the sea level rising?
Let me ask you a question here. What forms at a beach?
What forms at the beach?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Sand castles.
Sand.
Yeah.
So you might have a sandstone that's formed at a beach depositional environment. Now, if sea level rises, then that's no longer a beach anymore. It's deeper water, and you don't get sand anymore. You get finer grained sediments. That would be where your shales come from. And that would be laid upon a sandstone, for example. And then if the sea level rises even more, you could get limestone that develops, deeper water layer. And you could get the limestone form on top of the shale. And that's how you get those different layers on top of each other. Now then it's been uplifted by the uplift of the Colorado Plateau, which if you've ever been to Arizona, you can see the bulge in the earth. It's uplifted all those sediments up to 7,000 feet or whatever their current elevation is. Does it make sense?
Yes, but
sea science, I've just gone over this.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, like, now the water keeps rising, right, to set the new layer. and then the layer rises, and then now the water has to rise even higher now.
How do you know the layer? The layer doesn't rise at that point. Say the sea level just rises.
Yeah, the sea level rises, but then you get this uplift from the from the plateau.
Well, once it's all laid down and it's lithified, which takes a long time to lithify to cement, a sedimentary depositional layer. And once it's lithified, turned to rock, that's when you get the uplift. The uplift came
but like
tens
all
of
the
millions
layers
of years after the deposition of this layers.
Yeah, but like all these layer deposits are adding to the height of the canyon, right? The plateau and the layer deposition, and so these layers keeps getting higher. This also means that the water rising also has to get higher, and so now you have this sort of competition of getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And we get,
as I said, the uplift came. The uplift came tens of millions of years after those layers were deposited. You have the top of the Grand Canyon is the Permian limestone, which is a couple 100 million years old. The uplift of the Grand Canyon didn't occur until maybe 10 to 20 million years ago, something like that.
Well,
I'd have to look.
That's just gonna. Well, that's the thing. We can't actually verify that point.
Well, you have volcanoes that are associated with that. All this has volcanism because it's tectonic activity, and you do have volcanism associated with these events. You can date this stuff, Bubblegum.
I think it would be helpful for Bubblegum to give us the counter to like the mainstream geology record, I guess, because I'm not really clear like what his position is.
So the problem with like dating, like how they date the layers, is they'll date the layer by the fossil, and then they'll date the fossil by the layer.
They don't do that all the Bubblegum. They can date the layer sometimes by the fossil through trace fossils. So through index fossils.
No, so, I know, Big Mom. I know they don't do this all the time, but this sort of dating is invalid. Would you agree?
No, because you have. Let me elaborate on this. So if you have trilobites, for example, a particular type of trilobite, we know based on how those layers were dated in other locations, we know the date of when that trilobite lived. And we don't see trilobites above that because they went extinct. We don't see them below that because they hadn't evolved yet. So they're in one particular unit of time. So if you find that trilobite in a location, we know basically what the age of it is.
Because it didn't evolve yet. See, because it didn't evolve yet.
Right.
Again, look, you're presupposing it. That's a presupposition.
Oh my God.
Well, no, Bubblegum, we have the evidence to show what the evolutionary history of life is.
This isn't a really fair argument because you're just making him defend the entire mainstream.
No, I'm saying.
But
I'm saying
narrative, and you're not saying anything about what you believe.
That's a really good point.
No, I'm saying you shouldn't use circular arguments.
Bubblegum, you made me interrupt my whole vacation because of the crap you were saying. I had to stop the car, pull over, and address this crap.
Yes, I figured you were jumping up and down. I figured you were jumping up and down. Like, yeah, we were like.
I was cursing at the phone.
We were like destroying geology.
You guys did okay. Bubblegum, I think it would be
if geology's wrong.
I think you should really study some sedimentary deposition. You should study that subject.
Yes.
I'm not gonna study rocks.
Rocks are the history, Bubblegum.
If it's gold, I'll do it.
If you're not,
I don't think anyone should study rocks. But
you shouldn't act like you know about it.
I think you should have a reason to question it, right?
But that's the thing. Again, it's like the Big Bad almost rebuttal. Like, well, we date it because we assume evolution is true. That's not that's the problem.
That's not an assumption, though.
It is.
Not really.
Because
No.
again, because
I'm not,
like
inventing the theory of evolution. It's already been well substantiated.
okay, would we agree that like if it wasn't true, like let's just start with the world where we don't assume evolution to be true or Christianity or creation to be true. Would it not be a problem to date the layer by the fossil and the fossil by the layer?
Well, in that case, it could be.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me ask you this, Gunn. Okay, do you not believe that animals have changed, adapted, like modified?
He doesn't believe it.
Time? Like,
No,
I'm not saying you don't have to go back to the shared common ancestor part. You don't have to go back that. Just the idea that animals have changed. Like there's been some animals that existed long before, and they're somewhat different than the animals that exist now. Like you don't have to go back to the shared common ancestor part of it. All you have to do is admit that we have seen that animals change over time. That they evolve, their evolution, not the common ancestor part of evolution, just that they evolve through changes.
Well,
you don't believe that?
I think organisms have changed for the worse. So I don't believe for example, things are more diseased. Yeah. For example, koalas are becoming more diseased, or verge of everything's almost in the verge of extinction now.
Well, that's because we've destroyed most of their habitats.
That's human interaction,
but the thing about it is what I'm saying is that like what Big Bad Mama is trying to say does not have anything to do with the theory of evolution and shared common ancestor. All it is pointing to is the fact that we have evidence that animals have changed. There has been an evolution, sort of species. So, like, a different, like the horses of today are not exactly like the horses of thousands of years ago. Like everything we can find, fossils.
He doesn't believe in microevolution, Robin.
No, I don't believe that.
I mean, I don't see how you can deny that. So where are these, like, say, the shark species that we find in Mammoth Cave now that are so old? They're not a species that is anywhere on the planet today. Where does this fossil come from?
Well, there was all that tells us there was once a species of shark that existed that no longer exists.
Okay. Well, even if you believe that, okay, right there, what Big Bad Mom was saying is that when you find a species of these animals in a layer that no longer exists, but we know when they existed, that's how we can age the layer.
Right.
And how do you know that species of shark existed X amount of years ago?
Well, I mean, because
because you find it in the rock layer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because there are locations where you can radiometric date that layer, or a layer that's on either side of it, to where you do know approximately when that organism existed. Now, if you go to another location and you find that same organism, you can, it's an assumption, but you can assume that it lived at the same time because you don't find it above or below in the geologic column. It lived during a certain time period, that species.
It's an assumption based on radiometric dating.
Right.
Which is a reproducible process. But it's different types because you want to use different types.
Well, no, that's the thing. Like, we should only use the ones that we can actually validate. For example, I think carbon-14 is the one we can validate.
You can validate
potassium, argon. I mean, there's any number of them. But what
kind of radiometric dating can you not? I'm sorry.
let me just add this. Bubblegum believes that all these things were specially created. So he believes that there were dog breeds that were specially created, like the Dalmatian is his big example. But You also, Bubblegum, you've also said that you believe that like the Irish people were specially created, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Okay.
usually talk about usually
So-
talk about race because it gets me kicked out of channels all the time.
Well, but I mean, you have said that, and so everybody kind of knows where you stand on this. You're not, you're not a typical creationist.
But he's still
I'm actually
allowed to question what they're teaching in mainstream science. I mean,
What?
right? I mean, he's still allowed to question what they're teaching in mainstream science, right?
Right.
I mean,
He's allowed to
regardless of
question
what he
anything.
believes.
That's
It's just,
true.
like, he hasn't really
You guys
presented.
don't like.
At least I
I do.
haven't heard his version.
Oh,
Like I'm all for
version is
hearing his
important now.
version of reality.
Well, I mean, his version's only important because he's talking about your version. I mean, I don't see why that would matter, but
Well, yeah.
you know,
So
whatever.
there's like, there is a
It's-
mainstream normie science narrative, right? So what's his alternative to that?
Well, I'm an actual creationist, so basically,
What-
do you want like from the beginning, or do you just want from like
Sure.
beginning of life?
Why, like, why not?
I mean, that's a long time, and I don't really have time for that. I mean, I can summarize it. Simulation theory. God is the almighty computer that generates all reality. Therefore, it can never be within reality, right? And so he codes all these animals into existence because the spirit needs something to dwell in. The only reason you're alive is because you're a combination of body and spirit. The only way the spirit feels anything is through through this mechanism. And so we know these things are created because these are highly complex robots, highly complex machines. They're machines made out of carbon and water, but this machines nonetheless. And to assume that machines could put themselves together through like random acts of nature, like a wind or like I don't know rain, it's ridiculous. Nobody thinks that. But somehow we've been duped, and I say we've been duped by Christianity because it's Christianity who came up with this idea. And now the whole world believes this nonsense. I can only think this is the greatest ploy of the devil. I could not think of a trick more greater than evolution.
So do you think we're the universe like having an experience like of itself? Like that's the universe's means of experiencing itself. Is through us.
No, the universe is just a playground. We are.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not a pantheist who believes like God is everything. Like God is the rock, right? No, the rock is of God, but that's just simply a thought of God. It's not God. You are not your thoughts, right? I wouldn't say like I'm thinking of a car. I'm not the car. I'm simply thinking of a car.
Right.
Why should I believe any of this?
Because I'm not sure if you noticed, but simulation theories has kind of taken off, and I think most people are kind of like,
No, simulation theory is completely wrong.
well, you're allowed to think that, but you have to give rebuttals, right?
Yeah, because
And,
I don't
we get to
believe
that
the
debate,
universe
but,
is computationally reducible. That's my
I
argument.
absolutely okay. I think the Fibonacci sequence alone kind of proves it is. So if we
No,
see
that's
this,
not what
if we see this repeating, mathematical, quantity in everything in life and like the universe, like almost everything, really, then I think it would be mathematical reducible.
Why can't that just be physics?
Well, when we say physics, what are we really talking about? We're talking about the forces of nature, right? And so we have to explain where these forces of nature come from. Like gravity and the small force, the strong force.
I mean, I don't think any of our experiences are computationally reducible because we experience the world through qualia and none of that is quantitative.
Well, I would say so because, like, for example, the only reason you're actually able to talk is because there's a coded gene. For example, we have talking parrots, talking birds, this is a gene. They're only able to talk because they have this specific gene, which is the code, and so you're only able to talk because of a code.
Yeah, but I don't think the gene causes what you're saying it causes.
No, they call it the FOXP2 gene, which is like the gene that allows you to talk, speak. I think crows have ravens or crows have this.
What does it actually? What does the gene produce though? It doesn't just produce language. Like
No.
it has to produce like an organ in your body that, like we have, you know. So there's a certain.
No, when I said
that-
it's not computationally reducible, I meant that because of our direct experience with the world, it's not computationally reducible.
Well, I mean, look all around.
Reality can't be a computer type thing because that's not what our reality is like.
But it is part of the process. So what a calculator does is sand doing math, right? But the only reason it's able to do math, the only reason this sand is able to do math is because of the logic structures within it. And so we can, so we can reduce like, well, if math is dependent of logic, well, what's the only two things that we know that
isn't dependent of logic?
It is.
No, it's not.
Okay, yeah. Just look at your calculator, right? What is your calculator, if not just a bunch of logic gates on the sand?
That's a computer.
Yes, but like my calculator only does math. That's the only thing it does. Why is it able to do math?
This is so dumb. I fell for it again. I fell for the talk to Bubblegum. Can I get my fell for it again award?
No. Yes, you're gonna educate you.
My big bad mama.
Later, big bad
You're
mama.
just like you're saying that what a calculator does is math, which is just like you're just trolling.
You guys have 5 minutes. Just so you know.
Good
Bye-bye. Later. The reason I use the calculator example is because it's definitive proof, it's physical proof that math is dependent on logic. Because what is a calculator made of, if not just a bunch of logic gates? So the only reason it does math is because of the logic gates, right?
I'm gonna scream.
Hey, big man, mama, Missing Maud, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
So you want to throw me out?
We got 5 minutes
Right.
left.
I'm about to leave.
Yeah,
it's good seeing you, Bubby. He
broke me.
You too, Robin. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna dip out too. See ya. Thank you, Maud.
Bye. Yep.